Zambia.
There you go.
Oh, that's fine.
Welcome everyone to this joint meeting of the Delray Oak City Council and Planning Commission. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Uli,
Present.
Councilmember Howard,
Here.
Councilmember Sherman, here, Mayor Donaldson,
Here.
Commissioner Krieger,
Here.
Commissioner Getzels, here, Commissioner Knack,
Here.
Commissioner Wood, here, Commissioner Jackshaw,
Here.
Commissioner Amati, here, Chairman Haywood.
Here.
Okay, please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is public comment. Public comment must deal with matters subject to the jurisdiction of the city, the council, planning commission that are not on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the city council on matters not appearing on the agenda may do so now. There will be a time limit of 3 minutes per speaker. Public comment is now open. Okay, seeing no public comment is closed. We'll move on to our one and only item, which is the city council planning commission receiving a presentation of the revised 6-cycle housing element. And this is for information purposes only. And I will turn it over to Denise Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to be here with members of the planning commission and the members of the city council to talk about the Delray Oaks housing element update. The revised version that was posted a couple weeks ago to the city website. Tonight's meeting is my name is Denise Duffy, here with Troy Lawson from DDA. Tonight's meeting we talk about the updated housing element revisions and next steps in the process, and to be able to also go through policy by policy or program by program in case there's any questions. If there are no questions, I'll try and get through it quickly. But this is an opportunity to focus on the revisions and see where we are. So you can see the screen. We're going to do a quick background on the 6-cycle. I identified the summary of the HCD review comments and then talk about our revisions and the program specifically try to focus on it. Anything about the draft, so if you'd like to discuss any other item on the revision, please let us know. There we go. I'm gonna Okay, so we're planning for the 270 training units, regional housing needs allocation. These are carryover from the 4th and 5th cycle. The city has completed the rezoning in the 5th cycle and has now compliant housing element for the compliant housing element for the 5th cycle. And has apparently, according to HPD, not apparently, adequately zoned sites to meet the arena with the sites 1 and 1A and our buffer sites in addition to that. We've got goals and policies, housing element, for those that don't know it, does not require the city to provide or build the housing units, but it does require compliance with HCD. The wrong way. Brian, I'm going to ask you to take your laptop out and put it on the screen. Doesn't seem to be when. You have PowerPoint slides, so I know what I'm going to say. So start it out. the. Yeah, here we go. The housing element has the requirements of a profile, needs and resources, with housing sites, goals and objectives, fair housing analysis, and community engagement. We've done plenty of community engagement. We've completed the housing needs and resources. We've got a document that was submitted to HCD. Two different versions now, and we've submitted the third version at the same time it became public. This will be adopted, their document in December 23, and we are at the spot where we're gonna provide review key comments from it. I might have to just join again. Why it's so weird. Okay, so our this is just a list of the meetings that we held in 2023, jump to the different workshops and meetings, and our focus today is on the revision on September 24th. Gives you an idea that we certainly didn't meet the requirement on the previous slide about community engagement. And that, as the previous slides are, really we're talking about programs right now. The city is has reviewed the key comments and reviewed the comments from HCD and meetings, and received them in February, had meetings in March and April. We did update through city manager reports and an update last month, and we're trying to get the housing on to you last month, but we decided it's better to try and flush out a little more of the changes since we got some additional comments from HCD at the end. So, and the key comments that they have identified were included additional analysis of resources, explain anticipated capacity for housing sites. We'll go over this later. Expanded discussion of water availability, and they're very keen on providing local knowledge for the firms will be further fair housing section appendix A. So we added that to chapter 2 as well. Specific actions and programs were really identified metrics, specific actions and quantified objectives. And they said that these housing programs may be good, but you need to, HD wants to have a little bit of a hammer, if you will. And so tell us how many you're going to do and by when, and put more definitive action items within your programs. So we did that. They asked about adding ADU metrics and ADU incentives. We'll talk about that during that program. There are 2 new programs about one with no net loss, which is you can't lose any of the units or housing affordability areas by affordability level during the cycle. And we can ask questions about that. I'm happy to share. And we also added a home share program, right, that HCD post of their letter in 2024. Specifically added actions, and the other thing that they really wanted us to do to the key comments was really try and remove constraints for development. If you're going to be showing you're going to have development for affordable housing, if you can, make sure you have identified the constraints and know how you can remove or actually have development encourage to provide affordable housing. And in this case, they were focused on forward rather than constraints. For the AFFH, they ask for additional information. It's a very long section. It's appendix A. It goes into it. I know that we talked about this a lot in previous meetings, so I won't go into it. But they asked for more local data, expanding on programs and really focusing on special needs housing groups. HCD also provided several programs. I mentioned the home sharing. They also wanted us to provide additional information on housing mobility, which is really moving up, not displacement, but moving up and moving housing forward and housing choice vouchers. So this is going to be in the staff report. There is already a discussion on the bullet list of housing revisions. This is just an overview of that. I don't want to really go over it point by point, but just to let you know, we really focus on the chapters are, a lot of background information. So I'm just going to go and tell you really right now what were the minor items and what were the major items, and then we'll focus on the programs and any other major items that we'd like to talk about. The major changes, did not occur in introduction. That was really a quick update, and really just an affirmation of the rezoning and the actions that have occurred since December 23. So I really, that's minor. Population and housing profile, this is about, what is the city all about, what's our population, what's our ethnicity, et cetera. So we added additional profile information on special needs group. Again, it's not major revisions. We added information on additional resources in this chapter and also in the appendix A. Resources meaning in the sense of what can special needs group or those homeless or other groups like that, where are the resources they can go to assist them as they move through their process to try to find us. So that's background information that it doesn't involve policies or programs. Chapter 3, I would say, is not a major revision, but the revisions there were additions for HCD comments, and they really focused us on that chapter. We wanted to update some minor updates to the site information, site 1A. There's some change in the acreage, so we still have the map to change on site 1A. But there's some changes in that we wanted to identify a little more about the capacity of the sites, give them more information about that. And we clarified that ADUs are not being used to meet RENA in this city in our area. But they did want us to prove that what are the ADUs that have been created. And Laura sends me quarterly reports about the ADUs, so we had all the information from the city, so we provided that. And then we updated on the developer selection information. Again, showing HCD that the city is moving forward. In chapter 4, there were minor revisions to add more information about emergency shelters, how the city already does comply with that. Status of the ADU ordinance and the city's response. And then additional text, because another item for me to be is, do you have the water? Show us how you have the water, then tell us that you really do have the water, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't have water there, how are you gonna get the water? Where's the other water? So really, we added information on that and we continue to provide updates to HCD about this, our area's water situation is so critical. Provided any affordable housing, and again, they're very keen on removing any constraints to provision of affordable housing. So that was chapter 4, no changes in chapter 5 or 6, and then takes us to chapter 7, which is really the programs revised and added. We're again focused on objectives, timelines, and also even geographic targeting. So the HCD is used to larger cities, but geographic areas that are quite distinct and different. The city doesn't have that. And we've explained that to them in each of our meetings, but they're used to seeing what they're seeing and other documents, so they would like us to talk about our geographic areas. We have updated information on programs, which we'll get to, and then more information about the AFFH section 2, which is really resource programs and additional resources. So we're going to talk about each program revision by category. The categories are the policies and goals of your housing element, which are consistent and they really haven't changed. But they're, I think it's important as we go through this, we're going to talk about goal A, housing opportunities, providing adequate sites to build new housing units for all income levels, and they meet the city's fair share housing needs. Affordable housing, providing encouraged provision of a wide range by location, type, unit, and price to meet existing and future needs of the city. Removing constraints, as we've talked about. Goal C, equal opportunity housing. City is promoting equal opportunities for all persons, and that's a major goal. And quality housing, continuing to have in other jurisdictions, there may be more issues related to rehabilitation or loss of units because the units may not be up to conditions. City does not have that, but we do talk about that in our program. So program revisions, we updated, we're gonna talk about the program and then we'll show you the program as it's related also in staff report. It's on the city website, and feel free to ask questions or clarifications, and then we'll go on to the next one. If there's nothing, we'll just keep moving forward. So program A1, previously that program was to rezone to allow for to allow for residential zoning. We've completed the rezoning, so we just updated that a little bit and added with with HD wants to see, which is more monitoring. We also have a program to develop mixed use zoning designations. We again added a timeline, you're gonna hear this a lot, and quantified objectives on that program, and then clarified that this area, the program itself also applies to former and buffer sites. And added to the 3 that quantified objectives of targets. So program A1 is the revision there. It doesn't read very well on the PowerPoint, but it's in the staff report. Sorry about that. I'm happy to answer any questions about it, or you can wait till the end, but that's generally what the change to the program was. You'll see we tried to just do what they like, which is put a hole in the gray area, put more information on timeline and objectives. And in the bottom of the smaller square, even though it's repeating some of what has been said before, that's how it's easier for them to catch it and see it, and that's the goal. For program A2, as I mentioned, it was development of mixed use housing, zoning designation. We put in a timeline for it. We talked about the areas and we put in a geographic target. They also asked for a metric, so we put how many will we do by when? So that's the last bullet you'll see there. For mixed use housing project during the first half of the planning period with at least 20 to 25 unit density. And that's A2 revision. A3 is adding the same information from us above into the timeline and objectives, and then a metric of identifying 5 sites for a small lot within the capacity of at least 5 total housing units between now and the end of the planning period completion, but identify the sites early on. And then identify the geographic target. So that is goal, the first programs for goal A. We added a new program, and this is really regarding the known net loss, the HCD clarification law of monitoring residential capacity to ensure known net loss, adequate inventory that will remain available. So this is a new program, and if you have any questions about it, I have some additional information in the Q&A period. But essentially, the city is required to ensure that they have adequate area at each of the income levels under the RHNA, and that area and the availability of this housing is maintained throughout the entire planning cycle. And if you, there's timelines and objectives, and if you don't, then you would need to establish, you would need to establish in either case a formal procedure for compliance with known net loss. And the reason they have a formal procedure, which was asked in one of our meetings, is that there are various methods that you can do. You could do density bonuses, you could do rezoning, for sites, and so that's why they're saying establish a procedure. If something happens, like a developer that comes in and they're not providing enough housing for the affordability level, or they're trying to in an area, they're trying to reduce the zoning, or if the city decides they're going to change zoning and take your residential zoning off of where you have it, then you must go back and say, we will do it, this or that, and that's the formal procedure that's on the first bullet. And then you really want to always monitor the number of available units. You have your 270 that are within your sites, that you have enough acreage of residential and zone land, but you do want to ensure annually that those stay there. So that's the A4. Any questions? Feel free. No, I'll just keep zooming along. Program at goal B is there's really just minor items on this to update it to include the quantified objectives for the first 2 programs under goal B. And we added per HCD inclusion of some low-income individuals and more metrics onto utilization of housing choice factors. And that's we also add geographic targeting for B4. So this identifies what we did. A question was raised about the inclusionary housing on this program, which is basically assessment, the idea is to, what is the, identify from the city's perspective, policymakers, will we have a development agreement or will we have an inclusionary housing program to ensure that there's affordable housing on a former corridor as an example. So there's a program to research that, determine which way to go, and then, a quantified objective just identifies that if you're going to do that, it ensure that you have the compliance at 20% of affordability rate. And B2, as I said, it's just seeking more metrics and a geographic target.
So Denise, I had a question, or actually it's more of a general comment. In B2, it came up for the first time, if we saw, I saw it a little bit throughout. When we talk about the timeline and when we want to have something done, so here in B2, we talk about by 2025. Sometimes we say by the end of 2025, sometimes we say in a specific quarter. I think it would be more consistent and more helpful if we do that in a little bit more distinctly, and I think it will also help us as we put our to-do list together as to when we need to do something. So it comes up maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the document that it's just by a year, or maybe not even that much, but still, I think just to be consistent, that would be nice.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment and we really appreciate that. And that's some really good comments on meeting as well. So we will change that because it shouldn't be by date, it should be by the end of the.
Yeah,
By Q1 quarter, right?
Okay, thank
And
you.
in particular,
Yeah,
and some of those we sort of extending some of those dates.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
thank you.
Any other questions on that? And with that comment, we'll make that change.
Yeah, if anyone has comments on from the planning commission or the council as Denise is presenting them, please feel free to ask them at that time.
Thank you.
And then after we have that, I'll allow opportunity for the public to ask questions, comment, and give comment.
Okay, for program three, as I explained in the overview, it's expanding the new set of housing vouchers, the metrics and the geographic target. And then we have 3 programs all combined right here because simply the only changes were basically just adding a geographic target. On these 3 programs. There was a minor change on our program where we have identified preferential housing for teachers and local educational employees. If you remember, this is specifically added at the end of last year at the request of Monterey Peninsula School District. So we added an action to communicate with Monterey Peninsula School District to continue to assess their interest for development of affordable housing on their site. And added the quantified objective and geographic target. We added the new home sharing program to research and coordinate home sharing opportunities with at least one nonprofit with the quantified objectives. And there's B7, which is the preferential housing change. And then there's B8, which is the new home sharing program. So just a few minutes, a little bit on this. It's a program that's underway in City of Monterey. It was talked about in one of our meetings. And I think it's an opportunity for seniors or others to be able to link up with others that would might be willing to share their home, and it's a matchmaking process essentially. So this is us to be able, the city to be able to advertise a little bit and also to put a mechanism in terms of like to be able to maybe perhaps work with the city of Monterey to share in their already available program.
And I had a comment on B6. Regarding research on funding for construction, and it says anticipate to start seeking funding opportunities beginning in 2024. So I'm just wondering if we've actually started that. And if not, should we keep that comment in there?
I think at this point, we should probably change 2024 to 2025. I mean, I think it just, that when you talk later about, there's a timeline and each of these different programs requires monitoring of different things. It's really important to stretch out if you can,
Mhm.
because it's a small city and, I know the resources are making sure resources can meet. So
Great,
thank you for that.
you're welcome.
And Denise.
Yes.
Hi, I'm John. Yeah, so another also comment, but thank you, by the way, for presenting this, and of course, it's refreshing. I read the whole thing, but it was days ago. So I did notice that some of the programs have labeled quantified objectives. So I'm just like wondering if HCD would like each of those policies or programs would have a quantified objectives. Because I identified like there are many who have identified objects, but not all.
So where the programs are required to have quantified objectives and the metrics, if I call them,
Yes, yes.
they are shown, and then we are providing this to HCD, and they'll come back to say, you need more, or you need to add it to this program.
Okay.
So if you see where you think it's needed,
Yeah.
we will provide, we basically using the technique of with HCD said you should,
Yes.
and if not, we can basically provide it's provided information.
Provided.
A lot of times it just says, and we're looking for time in,
Yeah.
or every 5 years or so.
Yeah, so it seems like there are some that have timelines and also quantifiable, but they were not labeled as quantified objectives other than other programs. They have really like a label that says quantified objectives. So they might analyze us with that.
Right, that's a good question. They have it now, so we'll be, and it's an informal review of
Yes.
that question, and we'll also check for continuity throughout that it says objectives and quantified objectives. And I think that's all.
Thank you, Denise.
Okay, so, I think it was home sharing.
Mhm.
And, is there any other question on B8 home sharing? Which is the national one. Program C, program revisions are, this is about the ADUs, so, HCD had probably one of the most most comments on the ADU. Because they are used to having the ADUs be used for unit, to meet unit. But even so, they want, because they, HCD sort of considers the ADU as part of the citywide currently developed city. Opportunity to provide housing within currently developed cities, so they really would like the city to incentivize ADUs, and they ask that almost of every jurisdiction. But in this case, because it's an ability to provide some affordability levels through an ADU process that otherwise, we don't have the long-term water right now for within the city area, developed area, so here's an opportunity. So that's their thought process on it, so they may added some of the language to update that. We already knew we were gonna update the ADU ordinance, and you heard about that in August and September. We added language that they suggested for incentives to streamline the ADU development. And then specifically, they really wanted us to monitor the performance to ensure that all we do. In chapter 3, as I mentioned, we discussed the history of the ADU development, and conservatively estimated that, you know, you can do 3 or so ADUs a year based on the history. And, then we will be annually monitoring that target. By the way, we're already doing that. Reporting on that also, so it's just something that we say we're doing it, but we're already doing it through our annual progress reports. On April 1st. And then our other item is revising the city regulations. I'll talk about that. This is where they like to read something for us and ensure that we're not adding constraints to development of housing by further development. So C2, I don't know if anyone has any specific questions about the ADU ordinance that I just went over. I'm sorry, the ADU revisions that I just went over.
I did have one comment, but it's kind of, I can wait until you talk about parking. Around parking, because it kind of goes together.
Yes, Denise, another question. Thank you for this opportunity. So I'm just like wondering, what happens if we cannot achieve the quantified objective that we set? how or to what extent are we in trouble? So, because it could be a good question for HCD as well, we don't know, because we just want to be very sure that we set in the objective that we can achieve it. Because there are sometimes like for this program, like the number of ADUs, but of course the city doesn't have the control, like we don't know how many people would like to build ADUs in our city. But that's beyond the control of the city. So. this
So the
question-
question is, what are the ramifications
Yes.
if the city doesn't meet its target?
Yeah.
The HCD would really want us to do other things, so provide more incentives, reduce the fees, do something to try and jumpstart more ADU, promote it, advertise it. And then if you're not meeting your targets mid-year, there's a program that's review and take action, which is those in terms of reduced fees, et cetera. And if you're really not meeting your targets, there's an alternative that you could rezone properties for development. I don't think that's gonna be needed in this case. I think if we're meeting, I don't think their ramifications are going to be that the state's gonna come down and we're not having 380 units a year. And again, we're not using it to meet RENA, so we are, I think we're safe in that.
Yeah, thank you.
So C3, again, is the mitigating the city constraints. And what we did on this thing is we basically put more specificity into the actions that you see that are already on the left-hand side of the screen. And just put it in timeline and objectives so that it got a little bit more information. I do want to point out something on each of these bullets. It's consecutive. What we're gonna do is complete a comprehensive review. Probably write it down in the housing room, but what are the constraints within your zoning ordinance? And then they've asked specifically that we adopt the amendments to the parking. The zoning ordinance because they see parking as a restriction and constraint. We have already provided this again, is the third bullet is really something that we're already doing from the existing housing element. Amending the zoning ordinance. By the end of 2025, just for this transitional and supportive housing. Is something that we think we can manage within this time. It's really something that we've already got planned. And then on the second to the last bullet, that should actually read instead of complete a comprehensive review, because that's being conducted in the first bullet. It's really complete the changes to the drafts of the amendments. And then provide those essentially to the public, so the 2029 that would occur. Go for decision makers, and then the action would be adopt these amendments by 2030. So it's a long process, it's a lot to do. And so that's why we kind of elongated it. So we will make that amendment to the bullet, second to last bullet, because it's actually. Did you have a question?
Well, we were talking about parking, and we were looking at reviewing the requirement for garages for multifamily. Find it right now. But I'm wondering if we should consider removing, or at least reviewing it for all housing. Because I know there's many cities that use the conversion of garages to ADUs as an incentive for people to do ADUs. And here where we have the requirement to have garages, that's really a restriction for many people to actually create an ADU. So we might actually want to just think about garages in total rather than just for the multifamily.
Okay, and I hear the comment, we put for multifamily because it's specific to HCD. And I think that's really a policy discussion.
Right.
With your policy makers. Already that should come back to that at a different time, but.
Yeah, okay, so garages. What do they mean totally enclosed garages or carports considered a garage? Because we live in a moderate climate where a garage is not not necessary to completely protect your car. I mean, it's not like Wisconsin. You have snow.
So in this case, they're actually referring to garages and it's specific to what's the requirement that's already in your zoning ordinance in terms of you have parking standards and maximum amount of parking spaces, it's garage for single family, the garage for multi-family. So the action is to review that and make changes to the multi-family requirements, and then the suggestion is to get that standpoint of all different housing types. Then I'm gonna table that for now. It's not been requested by HCD, or be done unless the city manages something to say.
Just, I was gonna say that I wrote it down as a future planning commission item to discuss, because under current ADUI, I don't know that we could prevent somebody from converting their garage. Like, I need to talk to the city attorney and
Yeah,
look into that and then bring it back to you.
okay, perfect, thank you, John.
That, they're going to mention on C3. This is the program C4, and C8 was about removing constraints. I think so ensuring the availability and adequate water supply. We've already had this program in there, but we added some actions to collaborate, meet more often, with the Water Management District and CWD. And to really lobby for them to prioritize, provide allocation for affordable housing specifically. And these meetings are already occurring. So that's an action that the city managers are already doing. And then to monitor water supply to ensure that the water stays in. And if it doesn't, what do we do? We have to use on other properties. If there's not water in a certain location, that we have our site inventory that. And then required remediation prior to development is C8 and I think we'll talk about it. So we, I believe that this HCD under program C4 regarding water. Identifies that we suggest that we would. One, work with water management district and CWD. The other, that we'd also try and formalize any additional agreements with Green Coast Water District and actually prepare a water supply assessment. Which is a step toward water and corridor. In terms of, and then provide and ensuring that there's funding for water lines, et cetera, in George and more. And monitoring that. Is there any questions about this particular one? There's also infrastructure. We'll cover that too. Okay, hearing none. Program C8. This is really about the HCB asked that we don't have an EIR, so please put in mitigation from the EIR and have really touched on what you're going to be doing for to remediate former corridor. And so that's exactly what these are. And in meeting with the Army, working with DTSC, city hire a remediation clearance consultant to start preparation of an action plan. Obtaining clearance and confirmed hazard mitigation plans. And really ensuring that mitigations are enforced on development. This remediation effort on the portion of the property that does have a residential restriction on it is only specific to that area, but it's also to ensure safety for future owners in that area. Any questions on this one?
I'm sorry.
No, it's a guess.
I need to go back to C5.
Yeah.
Okay. So in C5, it's about the adoption of the safety element.
Yeah, what?
Adoption of the safety element. Thank you. Yes. And SB 1035 requires it, but in our program, we say as funds are available. Which doesn't sound very much like, we're gonna do it. It's the saying, that's saying more if we have money to do it, but I'm not sure we can say that, if it's required to do it. I mean, maybe we change your timeline, but if it's required to have,
I will defer to the city manager on that. Thanks.
It's a fair point. Yes, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're required to do that. So.
yeah, maybe we change the timeline, but if we're required to do it.
Yeah, technically, it's gonna require city council approval of funding to get
Yeah.
that done, but since they're approving the housing element, I'm going to assume that they would also work with me on budgeting for
Yeah.
that, so I have that comment, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then
So it's just consensus then that we should be eliminated that phrase.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
And then just to be consistent, you changed the timeline. Here, but not up here.
okay,
So just to check that.
are you talking about C
So
five?
in C5, under the bullets, you have the old timeline, and then the next part will change the timeline. So just be consistent there.
Thinking type of things like that. We have free to tell me that.
Thank you.
Okay, so revised programs, I think are in C9. Yeah, C9. No questions about the remediation program, C8. C9 is committing to extending infrastructure, which is requested by HCD to show us actions that you're going to do to remove constraints again and provide infrastructure for future development. And so then if there's any questions on C9, it's about development of getting roads and water, South County Road. These are actions that are already occurring, so, I did put them in. Any questions on that? Then we're getting to the promoting, programs under the goal D. So we added information on the adequacy of zoning for emergency shelters. In other words, that the city has enough area to allow for emergency shelters. Added timeline and definition, information on the amendment. Very minor, updated the timelines on pre-programs and added quantification objectives and geographic target on any program. So very minor changes other than, on program D. So anyone have any questions on D? Or,
These, I'm sorry. Real quick back on the eight, you just, somebody kind of keeps thinking about the developing funding source, that's mentioned several times. Just so I'm clear, does that mean that we just have a plan for where we might get the money, or does that mean we need to have like money lined up?
it typically means have a plan to try.
So this is who we think we might get the money from. Okay,
Is that on C8?
yeah, back in eight, that's what I'm back to eight, I'm sorry, I was just there, you know, I was like, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
because
so
it was
that's a
kind of-
good clarification. It's not that you have to have funding in hand.
Right, it's just like, it's a plan where we think we can get the funding. Okay, that's what I thought, I was really sure. Thanks.
Okay, so now which number?
And then in C8, under your timeline, I'm not sure if that makes sense, that was, it might be a typo, or maybe I'm just misreading it. Research and provide written report by the end of fourth quarter 2025, beginning the first quarter of 2026.
So just for the audience and D8, can you please identify what the title of that is?
Develop objective design and developmental standards.
So check the timing on item D8, which is the objective design and development of standards, and we will do that.
Yeah, it just, I think there's a typo there.
Okay, so, perfect.
Okay,
Thank you. Yes, so you're looking at the first bullet, research and provide written report by end of the fourth quarter 2025.
I'm looking at,
Develop.
within the box itself, in the
Yeah,
gray
so
box.
that, yeah, so that second bullet, develop objective and improve amendment approved by second quarter of 2026. So, okay, I'll check with you afterwards on that.
Yeah,
Okay. Or we'll have it separate.
Yeah, we can have
All right, so we're on programs D. Nope, now we're on E. We're moving all around. Program revisions on E, they're E3, E1, E2, E3, E4. Revised the timeline, added geographic targets, E5 is affirmed to be further fair housing, which is the question that we talked about before, and added information. Again, these are the changes on E1 and 2, E3, and E4. And the changes and questions. program E5, we really, this is really, where I really tried to pull in what had already been stated about special housing needs and pull this into the program to fit it in the system. So we added the existing programs already. Appendix A, under affirmative refurbished housing, we also provided some additional information, as I mentioned before, about housing mobility, missing middle, expanded, providing more information on geographic areas, because HD wanted it, and identify more specific information on which programs address warehousing. So that brings us to any other questions from the planning commission or city council on this report, with the staff report. And then my suggestion is to open up any public comments, and we'll go back to, any that's,
Okay, thanks, Denise. I'll start with the council first, then we'll go to planning commission, then out to the public. So I'll start with Vice Mayor Tuna.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Denise, for the presentation, and planning commissioners who are here for asking great questions. Thank you. So I just have, I was just wondering, like, looking at all the source of funding, so several programs mentioned seeking grants for external funding. So my question now would be, like, what happens if the available fund is not there anymore? So what do we do? So
I think, your question was related to a number of questions talked about trying to find funding.
yes,
And HCD wants each city to do that. In the case of the city of Del Rio, this is a little bit difficult, not a large city. And so it's really trying to find funding doesn't mean that you have to have the funding. Like the housing element is an objective, it's a program, it's not a requirement. Maybe state law to have a program, and it's not, you may not, if you can't find the funding, there's no funding there. So depending on what the program is, or funding goes away, then typically cities will just research other grants, find other programs if available. I think what this HD wants you to do is to continue to try and outreach to find sources for funding various.
so but they won't penalize us from because it seems like right now, like having the quantified objectives, they're really having some teeth to the, to the seats, and then what if we can't find funding? So that would be a good kind of like reason that, oh, we were not able to fulfill the program or because we don't have funding. Okay.
That's quite true, yeah, but I think there, and we can have that question to HCD and we'll talk to them directly. The ramifications are they provide grant funding for REAP 1.0, 2.0. If we don't continue and work toward to get a compliant housing, they may not get us more funding, HCD, so that's another option.
Thank you, Denise.
Councilmember Howard.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Duffy and Associates, as always, for your very diligent work in guiding us through this entire process. You know, we've had multiple meetings on this, a lot of public outreach, a lot of input from council members and planning commissioners, and we've gotten to a good place. Now we are seeing our revisions returned to us. Particularly like to thank you for publishing and announcing this meeting, the invitation to city council members, planning commission, and the public for office hours to further that effort in public outreach and response. One thing that I have some curiosity about is in program B8, the home sharing program. In the spirit of removing constraints throughout the document, I am wondering if that applies specifically to B8 in the way that presumably the home sharing recruitment, if you will, can be from abroad and not just from within the city, say neighbors, combined residents from down the street from each other, am I right?
If I,
anyone regionally or statewide could apply for a program that we offer or incentivize.
right, it's the home sharing is, if there may be people outside your population that lives in.
Great, and so, since it is a city program that we're promoting, are we, inadvertently creating any constraint by not saying that, this is a broader reach than just the city? Do we need any language accordingly? Or is that just assumed as the norm that,
We could
home
certainly,
sharing can be drawn from the entirety of the state?
we could certainly say, add something that says that this is going to, you know, not just be for donor citizens.
If you feel there's a need, just so that there's no implied constraint for that, because I think it's a beautiful program to provide safe and financially viable options for whomever. In need.
Okay, thank you, we'll do that.
Thank you again.
Councilmember Shirley.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Denise, for, there's a lot of edits you put into this, so I want to show appreciation for that. I also want to thank you for offering office hours. I took you up on that, and that was really, really helpful for me to have that time to talk to you about it, so thank you. I don't have any questions. The only thing with this is, you know, my heart palpitates when I see how many dates are involved in this and what needs to happen. I know I mentioned this to you, and I know you're working on a timeline, but I'd really like to see a timeline of the things that need to happen and, you know, like to be able to look forward and know what's coming up and that we're working on it. So I would suggest, and maybe this is most important for the planning commission, that they do maybe a quarterly review of our housing element and timeline, just to make sure we're keeping on task. You know, we put so much work into this document. It's an important document, and I would hate to have it just sit there and have us not really meet these quantifiable objectives that I'm put in here, so. That would be my one pitch, is that I'd like to see this revisited quite often.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, for the planning commission, I'll start at the end with Commissioner Krieger.
Thank you. Thanks again, Denise, and you don't have a lot of good work, a lot of work really is, obviously. It looks like, a lot of it's just trying to make HCD happy with, you know, apply with new laws, and I know that's a moving target. So not a lot of specific comments, I've been kind of going over those. Just one general comment and observation, maybe this is maybe more for staff than for you really, but we have looking through here, and you know, we have a very impressive list of public outreach dates, you know, lots and lots of them, but those of us we know that there's usually very minimum public involved, and oftentimes none. And though it looks good on paper, and this is like, this is the most thing I've ever seen at one of these things. One observation or comment might have been, we talked about housing outlook update, and I know that most people see this, whether it's on Nextdoor or on the kiosk or, you know, where they're going, right? They're like, yeah, whatever, they don't care. Maybe if we tie it in selling it, that we tie it into, this has the impact on our, potentially on our four-door development. Just an idea to give people an idea that, you know, this is more than just, you know, pushing papers around. This is, you know, this could actually impact the city, and if you wanna be involved at some point, hopefully we're gonna hear from our developer sometime and know what's going on, and the public's definitely want to be involved. What we don't want to do is get down the road and then, you know, something blows up because someone feels like they've been left out. And I know we scheduled, we published it, but I think we should let people know that it's not just the housing element, it's impacting our forward development. I think if you tied it into that somehow, I think you might get a little bit more interested. So just a observation, but this, yeah, thank you for all the hard work.
All right, Commissioner Kessler.
Denise, thank you for all the hard work. Thank you for the time you took with me. Our 45-minute long, 30-minute meeting. Something that, it's just, you know, frustrating, I think, for all of us, is that HEB requires us to have quantified goals and objectives This is these are, this is a goal. To provide this housing. It's not a requirement, yet you require us to have these goals. You know, it's bureaucracy at its best. Or worse, however you want to look at it. I did mention to you, we didn't talk about, the buffer, zones of, and it's probably something more for the city manager and something to be considered would be, part of property K2, which is at the far end of our property on South Boundary Road, which is, the RV park parcel. Part of that does have a Caltrans easement on it from those of us who have been here a long time. When the road closed, there was a plan to reroute Highway 68 in that direction. So Caltrans has an easement on it, and I think that we should, regardless whether or not we need that part of the parcel for housing, that we should look at the possibility of asking Caltrans to give up that easement. And the other thing I talked about was, and we talked about was veterans.
Yes, I do want to mention that, we had a meeting and one of the, requests from, Planet Fish is, to look at veterans as a special needs group. And we are looking into that because, and also to think about preferential housing for veterans and former border. So in the next version of the HCD document, we'll add trying to find more information about the number of veterans that are served in Dark Oaks. I know there's over 30,000 of them served in Northern County. And we've also added information on the resources available to veterans. So that was a really great comment. Thank you. I forgot to mention of the council member, Shirley, and we had 2 really great meetings and we will get some good information.
So with regard to the privacy to the bypass easement, normally Caltrans, easements, and that they have no intention of using them. But in this case, the property owner could be easement and then. Property, yeah. None of it is our property. Cranex are interested in getting that easement, but they Caltrans have expressed that they're willing to do that. I don't know where they are in that process, but that would then follow the city to do whatever they need from us to support that process going forward.
Okay, Commissioner Canade.
Yes, I too agree with what you were saying earlier in that I'm not sure how to get that out more than it already is, because you really worked hard at reaching out to the community. I think that there's been a really strong effort there. And there's been okay, well, I'll stop that. I'll try to get to my point. But I don't know to what extent people know that we're trying to, for example, foster the development of an EDU. Right? And how many people might be thinking, well, I wish I could do that, but don't even know that it's an effort that's ongoing. And so I'm wondering, do we know anything about if there is interest out there as have people been asked?
For AD.
Yeah, for example, I'm saying, for example, for ADUs.
And I think that what we found in our research, talking to Karen and manager and Laura, is that yes, there is interest and there's interest for ADUs, but there's concern because most people don't have the water availability. You have to change your faucets and to be able to be, most people in a housing, single family home wouldn't be able to add an ADU under the current CBO, cease and desist order,
Right.
under the water management district. So I think once that is lifted or a temporary allocation of water from water management district, I think we'll see a lot more interest. And again, the talk about more advertisement and incentives for ADUs, I think that would make a difference. And it's definitely something that HCD would like to see as well. I don't know, John, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Not really, I have a point to add to that.
Okay, Right. But we do hear you about the outreach efforts, for both of you. It's very, tough to get people to come to me.
No, they're good,
You're doing, yeah,
you're doing everything you can. I was just thinking, how that maybe if we add a little more description of what it actually is, because
yeah.
people see housing element and they're like, yeah, whatever. If you start talking about corridor land, they might get a little more interested.
Yeah.
That was my, it's just selling it, the packaging, that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
You're doing, I don't know what else you can do.
Yeah.
You
And I
know,
wish-
door to door, maybe, you know, hand people a flyer, but that's about it.
Yeah, I've been impressed by all the, problem solving that has been, brought into this, all the different, and the bird dogging of just like moving from this point to that point, you've done a lot of.
Team effort.
Yeah.
Other staff, so thank you.
Right, sure, they work.
Denise, thank you, as always, I help you do this, and I don't, this looks like a thankless kind of job, it's not something I could do. I have to admit, in the couple of days I took to read this a little bit at a time, I fell asleep twice.
I appreciate that.
Said that loud.
Yeah.
I would thank everybody else for their comments, and this is really good stuff, and a lot of questions I got are answers. And it just occurs to me that, you know, with these needs for people going out looking for funding, there's gonna be a lot of jurisdictions that are probably gonna be clamoring for that kind of stuff, so that's not gonna be an easy thing, I don't think. And I also wonder where your feelings about, this just seems like, in some ways, a bureaucratic exercise. It's nice to have it out there, but it sure takes a lot of staff and your time and our time. Anyway, thank you. It's a good job. As always.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your focus.
Thank you. Thanks to all the staff and our staff.
Right, Commissioner Wood.
I'm still the hard work, and my question is, what's next?
It'll be next on the slide.
Okay, so, yeah, what the next, you know, what,
No, I think it's a great opportunity. Happy to answer that right now.
Okay.
It's a great question. So this HCD has agreed to do an informal review. And a formal review would be a 60-day process, so they'll be looking at, we already heard back in the next 30 to 60 days. And it has an element or isn't an iterative process, so HCD very much comes back to us and says, well, I like this or this. So in the informal review process, we'll be able to have direct dialogue about what they think about each of these policies, programs and revisions, and moving forward from that, we're gonna get a specific set of recommendations that if it's very specific and we can translate it. If it's in writing, we'll just bring it forward to the planning commission and the city council and then one of these meetings. And if it's easy to do, we'll just make the changes and then bring it forward to the city council and planning commission in a forum like this for separate. And say here are the revisions that we requested, and then you go forward with a formal adoption or an informal adoption. And just send it out to them, but they, you know, asking them to read through the compliance. So those are the next steps. It's an end and some.
that'll happen in the next couple months.
In the next couple months, the review will be completed, and they should get all of the comments that they have in this informal review process. And kind of speeds things up, they suggested.
Thank you.
Right, Commissioner Jack Shaw.
Thank you. I'm just curious, if we don't meet some of these numbers, we talk about lowering the or incentives to get people to do this. But yet, if someone comes before us, the planning commission wants to add on a bedroom and a bath, do we lower their costs also, or do we make incentives for them to do something? Or do we drag them through the coals and just say, too bad, they get to do their ADU for over the counter, but yet they come to us and we drag them through the coals because it's gotta meet all these standards? How do we handle that? So planning commission? Do I just say, sorry, put an ADU in and not a bedroom and a bath? For more cost? A dead silence. How do we handle that?
They're not really related, because this is an ADU is for additional housing
Correct,
and.
but there's no standards for ADUs and that.
Well, there are standards, but they're being loosened, that, I'll agree with you.
But not for a bedroom and a bath. If someone comes before us. The
Yeah,
planning commission.
yeah, so that's gonna be governed by the cease and desist that Denise mentioned, so. That's why we don't see any expansion of bathrooms and bedrooms. And any additional water source would be, for better or for worse, would be prioritized for additional housing.
And there are some standards for ADU in terms of how you can, you know, side
The
yard.
planning commission never sees that. Just breezes right through.
Yeah, again, for better or for worse, we're governed by the state first, and we have to follow those.
Gotcha.
Right, Commissioner Watson. Anything else, George?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And everyone has said incredible amount of work. It really is awesome how much work we've had to do. And I do see in all of these programs, responsible agency being planning commission over and over and over again. So I appreciate Councilperson's Shirley's recommendation that we set in our own timeline with the specific programs that we are responsible for looking at and just get it on the agenda for the next year, regardless of whether we have meeting for other purposes or not, and just meet and get our work done and be responsible for what we're responsible for.
And I can't disagree with that.
I know you do, but. And I think also, if I may add to that, we should be talking to HCD about expanding some of the timelines. Out a little bit, because, you know, when we look at these starts, there's, oh, there's a lot. 44, 20, 24, 25. You know, I think they would be amenable to that, and so that's something that John, that's management, and I talked about. We will share this really lovely page. Of the 17 graphic of the timetable. That's, there's time to come back. And then that might be something that we also provide to the planning commission, set up, you know, quarterly sort of program. Depending upon the requirement. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I would like to take it out to the public. So if you have any questions or comments, you can ask them from where you're seated right now, or you're more than welcome to come up to the podium. But at this time, public comments only.
Well, I have a comment, which is that I had the privilege of the time to come down to City Hall and read the whole document in the hard copy. And I enjoyed it. I came down on 2 different days. And I found it well written and very, very clear. Which I really appreciate. And like everyone else, I'm impressed with the amount of work, and it's an impressive document. But I really did enjoy reading it very much. It's extremely interesting.
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that, and I really want to also extend my thanks to Troy Lawson again, because he was a big part of this process, and it's really nice for him to be here.
Well, thank you.
I have a comment. Or actually, thank you very much, Denise. I think this is absolutely superb. You've done so much work, and I deeply appreciate it. And all you guys up here, council people and commissioners, you've done a very good job in asking some very pertinent questions. And as a citizen, you're right on. You really are. And my only concern is in the future, it's actually twofold. Water, you know, everybody says we have water, or we do, we don't. I don't know. Maybe that's anybody's guess. And the other thing is the contamination of the soil out in Fort Ord. And I worry about that. How deep is it? Is it 2 feet out there? Is it 6 feet? Is it gonna be with a limit? Is it gonna prevent us from developing out there? I think these are questions in the future that I personally worry about, and I'm sure some of you council people and commissioners worry about it too. And also I worry about, and this is a little off the subject, but Carmel, what are they gonna do? Where are they gonna put their affordable housing? Is it gonna be in the Sunset Center? Is it gonna go up 6 stories? Pacific Grove, I think the state kind of did an overreach on this whole program. And once we do all this and send the state, are they gonna okay it? Are they gonna have any allowances if we can't meet these, these deadlines and programs? That's only my concerns, but thank you.
Thank you. I think I can answer the question on the, allowances for deadlines, things like that. I think they know that we're on track to continue moving forward. Not gonna get it in within time frame and provide the rezoning and part of the fifth cycle and stuff. I think the state, I feel, is really working well with us.
Yeah, just a little bit more on that. So the purpose of this and the emphasis on this is providing additional housing and addressing the housing crisis. So as long as we're making progress in that direction, the programs are there to assist that. Programs are not there to be a hindrance to that or to take up staff time or all that. So as long as we're making progress that the state can see to try to develop affordable housing, they're not gonna nitpick us on, well, you didn't do this program yet, you didn't do that program. They've been really good at working with us, and I'm expecting that they'll continue to be.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and if we're not moving forward and we're not making progress, that's when the punitive actions come.
Go ahead.
My name is Brian Fields. I'm a field rep with the Carpenters Local 646. We're located in Marina and Monterey County. Had the opportunity to come to the last city council meeting and address the council. So mayor and council, thank you for hearing me again. And chair and commission, my name is Brian Shields. I'm a field rep with the Carpenters Union. One of the things that I wanted to highlight tonight is development, though it's 270 units for Delray Oaks. What I've seen in other cities, and I've just been moved down here, is it lends basically to an extortionary workforce, right? The residential construction that goes on out there, a lot of times the folks are being brought in here. I've walked several projects up in Santa Cruz, say, and those people are actually coming in from Stockton to work here. So they come in, they come in on Monday morning. Then they sleep on their car Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then they work Friday, and then they go home back to Stockton. And that's how they can find some form of dignity on the amount of money that they're getting paid and trying to make it here in California. So it's a difficult deal. I've given this suggestion to other cities, and my other field reps as well have given this same suggestion to other cities, but this is the city that's closest, and I just wanted to read their encouragement. I provided 6 copies to the city clerk. Didn't realize there were so many people here tonight. I apologize. But it says this is in the Capitola housing element, and it's policy 2.5 affordable housing development. The key comments is local higher preference for housing construction, and it says encourage developers and contractors to evaluate hiring local labor, hiring from or contributing to apprenticeship programs, increasing resources for labor compliance, and providing living wages. And the reason that I find that this is so important is because it empowers the city, the commission, to be able to ask that question of a developer. I've been in a city council meeting where the developer has literally stated, you have no authority to ask me that question, right? And so you know exactly what kind of development that was gonna be, right? This gives another tool to the city. It's not a hindrance because it's encouragement, and it doesn't constrain development in any way. There's Capitola, Belmont, these are Foster City, Palo Alto, Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, Redwood City, Menlo Park, Los Gatos, so on and so forth, Daly City as well. And I provided all the documentation of them. Some of them are a little shoddy. It's like a picture that I took, and I need to actually go back and update my file before I provide this to anybody else. But you know, the county of San Mateo as well adopted this language on their housing element. So I would greatly appreciate it. The working men and women of Monterey County would greatly appreciate it if that would also be adopted into the housing element of Delray Oaks. Thank you.
Well stated.
Any other public comment? Seeing none. Denise, thank you for your presentation, your professionalism, your decades of service to the city of Delray Oaks.
Your patience.
Yes. All of that, plus just being so accommodating and transparent by offering to meet with council members and commissioners on a one-on-one basis. I really appreciate that. I really like the comment about tying the housing element to the corridor development. I try to do that at every opportunity, whether I'm talking with residents, if I have the opportunity to speak in front of groups within Monterey County, leaders that are out there. We've tried our best to incorporate it into our development workshops, which we will also have upcoming workshops that we'll plan as we see the developers ready and at that point where that makes sense to do it. So we'll incorporate it there as well. And you know, anything we can do to advertise that, I think is very, very good. You know, with the 270 units, the other thing when I'm out there talking with groups and leaders from other cities, it doesn't seem like much. But if you look at that number, it's almost 40% of the current housing stock that we have in the city. And interesting enough, it's equal to the number of units that are on the south side, which George would say would be the good side. I differ, I think it differs. But it's exactly the number of units that we have on the south side, so that's pretty significant. So, you know, what we're doing is really in line with what the other cities are doing. Their numbers are just much, much bigger. Water is always gonna be a big issue when folks are gonna ask about it. And Denise, I'm just wondering, do we need anything from the Marina Coast Water District at this point to satisfy the needs of the housing element?
So I think in program C4 that talks about moving forward with water supply assessment, which I think is a good idea. But we need the numbers to understand what the developer would be coming in with, so. The city has a Cannon will serve letter and the Marina Coast Water District agreement, that John can speak to probably more than I can. So other than those items that we put in to keep moving forward on water, I that's continuing meeting and as city manager is doing.
Okay, and so there's no specific timeline, action requirements.
There is in program C4 it talks to, requesting a water supply assessment by the in 2025 or sooner. Because that is water supply assessment will give the documentation of water availability. And then the next step from that is part of the EIR that would be done for development. And then the next step from that is water supply verification, which is that's like a capital letter. I think it's also continuing to monitor availability and ensure.
Okay, got it. And just to verify, we going through the rezoning process, if we've already rezoned for mixed use on that Florida property. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's correct.
Got it.
There's already development allowed under the general plan, for commercial, office, et cetera. And we're using for residential, or one.
Got it. And then the last thing, it was brought up about garages and carports, and the city manager is going to work with Chair Hayworth to potentially get that on the planning commission agenda, and then after that, the council agenda, and we can take a look at that ordinance to see if it makes sense with respect to ADUs and, you know, just generally taking a look at it to see if things have changed within the city where that ordinance needs to change appropriately. So those were my comments. I'm gonna give one last opportunity for anyone on the council. If you have any questions or comments. Yes.
I was just wondering if we want to address, Brian's comments and seeing if we want any of that language into our housing element, talking about hiring local workers and living wages, and I was wondering if anyone has thoughts on that. That seems like something I would be interested in supporting, and so I'm curious how other people feel about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, is, you know, is this the time that would make sense? I'm asking the city manager if this is something that we would have to put as a decision item, or is this just something that we throw out for discussion purposes?
Yeah, if there's consensus on the council that you want to include language or for staff to explore language like that. My preference would be to direct staff to explore language like that, so that we have some amount of time to look into it, talk to the person. Come back with it rather than without it right now.
Okay, I think that makes sense, and we can do that. That way they have opportunity to research it, come back to the council with any points that they've got from that resource, research. And we take a look at it. Okay, yes.
One thing I would, that I've been talking about ADUs, and I know that the thought right now is that it's contained partially because of water rights. There are a lot of solutions around that, about water that, and we're talking about getting some plans, which I'm excited about. For the city would have some approved plans for ADUs, type of thing. Yeah, I think it would be a good place to add also, add their potential solutions for water rights.
Yeah, there are preset, approved building plans that other jurisdictions have.
Yeah.
What you're talking about. Yes, other opportunities for how to deal with water as part of that solution.
Thank you, Mayor. Just kind of echo some of the comments that have already been made, comments and concerns, and something you did address. In meeting, many of these quantifiable objectives, there were timelines cited, and which kind of impose constraints upon ourselves to meet certain deadlines. I would like to, and you've already alluded to, on a couple in specific, that you would look into, and I would like to see if we can, across the board, try and outstretch all of those as far as possible while showing attention, yet still maintaining compliance. Give us as much leeway as we can, because some of these are so conditional. I mean, we talk about water, building constraints, our own local ordinances versus state mandates and laws. And so if you could just work to push that as far out, while not implying that we're not trying to meet them, but to just give us as much leeway as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments from the planning commission? Anything further from the public? Last chance. Okay, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.